deepens and its quiet settles around us, we come now to the sixth night. Let the world grow softer, let the breath slow, and allow the unfolding tale to ease you into calm. And should a thought or gentle suggestion rise within you, feel free to send it our way, so this shared journey may grow ever more refined. All that day, long before the stars reclaimed the sky, Sultan had found no rest. His duties were performed with precision, his commands issued with their usual firmness. Yet behind every decree lingered an intrusive whisper, Shahrazad. Her name, like a mischievous breeze, kept finding its way back into his thoughts. He tried to banish it. He tried not to remember the gentle lilt of her voice, the measured calm in her gaze, the unassuming courage with which she spoke to a man feared by all the kingdom. But memory is a stubborn courtier, and it followed him through every hall. At midday, as he walked beneath the marble colonnades, sunlight flashing upon floors, the thought of her smile stirred something warm, so warm it startled him. It flowed through his chest like the first touch of spring after an endless winter. His steps faltered. His breath quickened. The blood in his veins, long accustomed to cold command, felt suddenly alive, restless, unbearably human. He hated it. A frown carved itself across his brow. How dares she invade my mind? He thought. How dares she soften what time and betrayal have hardened? Rage flickered, sharp, familiar, comforting. He clung to it as a drowning man clings to driftwood. And yet, as he turned away, he found himself imagining once more how she had looked the previous night, seated with grace, her words painting worlds that lulled his darkness into slumber. The duality tormented him. At times he welcomed the warmth like a long-lost companion, at times he cursed it, pacing his chambers with clenched fists. But the day marched on, and with every passing hour, her presence pressed more insistently upon his mind, until he could scarcely tell whether he despised her for it or longed for it. By the time night descended, its cool breath washing over the palace roofs, Sultan felt as though he carried two hearts in his chest, one forged from fire, the other from shadow. When Shahrazad finally stepped into the chamber, the world seemed too still. The soft rustle of her silk garments reached him first, then the gentle rise of her perfume, like blossoms opening at dusk, and at last her face, serene in the lantern glow. Every trace of the Sultan's simmering frustration dissolved like smoke caught in the wind. She bowed slightly. "Peace be upon you, O King." Her voice, oh, her voice. It flowed through the chamber like a ribbon of moonlit water, smooth and luminous, curling around the carved pillars, settling upon his skin. The Sultan felt it more than heard it. His breath tightened. The smile that touched his lips was small, carefully hidden beneath the mask of kingship, but it was there, warm, undeniable. "And upon you peace," he answered, though his voice lacked its usual iron. Shahrazad approached with elegant restraint, and when she fulfilled the wifely duties required of her, Sultan found his heartbeat quickening once more, this time not with anger, but with a long-forbidden tenderness he dared not name. Midnight slipped past. The moon climbed high. And as tradition now demanded, Shahrazad seated herself before him, her eyes bright with stories yet unspoken. When she began, her voice wove itself into the air once more, and Sultan's heart, rebellious and alive, throbbed like a drum awakened after years of silence.
I lived my days unaware till love found me in your stare. One silent moment, soft and true, and all my soul fell into you. Take my hand into the dark, stay with me through every breath. You turn my quiet, frozen heart into a flame that wakes from death.
Thus, with the sixth night settled around them like a silken cloak, Sharzad continued. Now, O King of Time and Master of this night, let me resume the tale where we left it. And her words drifted seamlessly back into the world of legends and the fate that awaited them beneath the whispering tree. She continued her tale as if the night itself leaned closer to listen. King Yunan, a figure of wisdom yet wearied by the weight of his crown, reclined upon his ornate throne, casting a sidelong glance at his envious vizier. A glimmer of amusement danced in his eyes, tempered by a veil of caution. "Ah, my friend," he began, his voice rich with the cadence of storytelling, "allow me to share a tale that may hold a lesson for you. Once, in the sun-kissed expanses of Persia, there lived a nobleman named Sinbad, whose spirit was as fervent as the blazing sun overhead. He was no ordinary royal, rather, he was a passionate hunter, enchanted by the thrill of the chase. His days were spent pursuing the elusive creatures that roamed his verdant fields. Among his pursuits, he cherished falconry most dearly, possessing a bird of such extraordinary talent and grace that its fame stretched far beyond the borders of his realm. So deep was his affection for this majestic falcon that he had commissioned a delicate cup of gold, adorned with glimmering jewels, to hang from its neck, a vessel for its thirst. On a fateful day, when the sky shimmered like polished azure, Sinbad ventured forth to hunt upon a sprawling plain. Gazelles scattered across the grass like dandelion seeds caught in a gentle breeze, their delicate forms glimmering in the sunlight. Sinbad, a hunter of great skill, commanded his men to form a vast circle, tightening it gradually so that no creature might slip through, either to be taken captive or brought before him by the keen eyes of his falcon. Yet, of all the graceful beings within the circle, only one gazelle, a creature of ethereal beauty, as if the wind itself had shaped her, found herself ensnared. In that moment, Sinbad's voice rang across the plain. "If this gazelle breaks the circle and escapes, the man through whose gap she flees shall forfeit his place at my table." But fate, ever playful, had its own design. The gazelle, sensing the tightening noose, gathered herself and leapt with astonishing poise over the Sinbad's head, rising like a creature born of the air itself. With a grace that rivaled the flight of birds, she vanished into the open plain, leaving Sinbad and his hunters alike in awed silence. In a fit of rage, Sinbad himself took up the chase, sending his falcon into the skies. The powerful bird took flight, swiftly overtaking the fleeing creature, and with a swift strike it struck the gazelle, bringing it down. When Sinbad arrived, he captured the gazelle and claimed it as the trophy of his relentless pursuit. Weary and parched from the exertion, he sought respite beneath a sprawling tree, its leaves whispering secrets in the breeze. There he noticed droplets falling from its branches, glimmering like jewels in the sunlight. With eager hands, he took the golden cup from around his falcon's neck and positioned it beneath the cascading drops. However, just as he raised the cup to his lips, the falcon struck his wrist with its powerful wing, sending the precious liquid spilling to the ground. This happened again and again, until Sinbad, consumed by fury, shouted, "Mad bird! You deny yourself, and you deny me." In a moment of reckless despair, he struck at the falcon, and its wings were harmed, grounding the magnificent bird. Yet, in a final act of loyalty, the falcon directed Sinbad's gaze upward. There, amidst the foliage, he discovered the terrible truth. The droplets were not life-giving water but venom, dripped from the fangs of a serpent coiled above. It was too late. The wounded falcon let out a haunting cry, a sound that reverberated through the air, echoing the lament of the gazelle as it perished. Overcome by remorse, Sinbad stumbled back to his palace, locking himself away in silence, consumed by a deep and abiding regret. In his grief, the cry of the falcon became indistinguishable from the haunting sound of the gazelle's demise. He was left in a state of bewilderment, pondering whether the sound arose from the falcon's final moments, or the ghostly echo of the gazelle's spirit he now seemed to hear once more. "And so," King Yunan concluded, turning his gaze to the malicious vizier, "would you have me condemn to death a wise sage who has restored my honor, to purchase for myself a lifetime of shame and repentance? I shall never heed your venomous advice. I have long known your true nature, and in this brief time, I have come to appreciate the pure-hearted goodness of the sage of Ruyan. If I keep you in my court, it is solely because none other in the land can manage the accounts of my divan and attend to the affairs of state. In short, cease your scheming. Do not tempt me, for I will never, at your behest, see a man put to death, nor bring about another's end." But the wicked vizier, undeterred by the tale of Sinbad and the king's command to desist, persisted with his malevolent counsel. "My king," he implored, "I speak solely for your benefit. The craft of the sage of Ruyan is that of healing. Mine is the art of governance. Beware, for if you reject this counsel, this well-meant advice, you will be led to ruin. He who accepts counsel finds salvation. He who spurns the counsel of a well-wisher invites ruin. O King Yunan, are you not familiar with the tale of the vizier and the king's son?" As the Sultan's curiosity piqued, eager to hear the unfolding story of the king and his son, the spiteful vizier began anew. "The tellers of tales, those keepers of ancient lore, recount that an Iranian king, a sovereign among the great rulers of Persia, had a son of striking beauty and youthful charm named Shayan. This youth harbored an insatiable love for the chase, often yearning to partake in the pursuit of game. Yet his father forbade him from hunting alone, always accompanying his cherished son on these thrilling escapades. But as fate would have it, the affairs of the kingdom grew increasingly tangled, leaving the king bereft of leisure for a full month. Relentlessly, the prince implored his father for permission to hunt alone until, at last, the king relented, granting him leave with a caveat: His wise and prudent vizier must accompany the youth on this venture. On the fateful morning of the hunt, the king took his son aside, his voice laden with earnest concern. "I implore you," he urged, "do nothing against the counsel of the vizier, and tread not where he forbids." The weight of his father's words hung in the air, a warning wrapped in paternal love. The first day of the hunt yielded no game, a silence that echoed across the vast plains. Yet on the second day, the prince's keen eye fell upon a gazelle of extraordinary beauty, its gaze fixated upon him from a distance, a vision of grace against the backdrop of the sprawling landscape. He pointed it out to the vizier, his intention clear, but the vizier, sensing an ominous portent, forbade him to pursue it. A struggle of wills ensued. The prince's resolve clashed with the vizier's caution. Ultimately, heedless of the wise man's objections, the prince set off after the gazelle, his heart racing with the thrill of the chase. As he galloped away, the vizier's voice rang out behind him, laced with urgency. "O headstrong prince! Should you find yourself in dire straits, remember to recite the special prayer you utter each night." The prince, though emboldened by his ambition, committed this well-meant warning to memory as he urged his steed onward, the gazelle leading him across the flat expanse. But as he pursued, the creature suddenly vanished, as though it had melted into the very earth itself. Bewildered by its abrupt disappearance, the prince pressed on, his heart pounding with confusion. In the distance, he spotted a girl of surpassing beauty, sitting alone in the midst of the plain, tears glistening like dew upon her cheeks. He approached, reining in his horse, and asked, "Who are you, fair maiden? What brings you to this desolate place? And why do you weep?" The girl looked up, her sorrow palpable. "O prince," she replied, "I am the daughter of King of India. I was hunting with my father and his retinue when I spotted a gazelle. I chased it, but it disappeared without a trace. When I turned back, I found myself utterly alone, lost in this endless wasteland. Would you be so kind as to allow me to ride with you and take me to my father? My horse bolted and left me behind. If you had not come, noble prince, I would have perished here in grief and loneliness." With a heart full of chivalry, the prince helped the lovely maiden onto his horse, and together they galloped eastward in search of her father. After a time, they came upon a stream, and the girl's thirst became apparent. "Prince, I am parched," she said. "Please stop for a moment so I may dismount and drink." He halted his horse and she dismounted, rushing to the stream. But as she splashed water upon her face, a transformation occurred. In an instant, she morphed into a giant, her laughter booming like thunder, echoing across the heavens. "My dear children," she bellowed, "come. I have brought your lunch." At her command, 3 young giants emerged, their grotesque teeth bared in a menacing grin. Terror gripped the young prince as he trembled like a leaf caught in a tempest. Yet, in that moment of impending doom, he recalled the vizier's shouted warning. If he found himself in peril, he must not forget the special nightly prayer. With death looming just a breath away, he recited the prayer with fervor, blowing toward the fearsome giants with each intonation. With the first recitation and breath, the giants froze. By the second, they were rooted to the spot, unable to advance. With each subsequent recitation, They grew thinner and smaller, until, by the 10th, both the great giant and her monstrous offspring had vanished entirely, dissolved into the ether. The prince exhaled a profound sigh of relief, his heart racing, as he leapt back onto his horse and galloped westward toward his kingdom. On his return he encountered the vizier, who stood waiting with an anxious escort, his expression a mixture of worry and hope. Upon seeing the prince safe and sound, the vizier raised his hands to the heavens in gratitude. "Thank God," he cried, 100,000 times, "for returning my benefactor's son unharmed." Turning to the prince, he continued, "The difference between us was this. You saw a phantom from a distance, and thought it a gazelle. I saw a giant. Thank God your wit and courage saved you today." The weight of wisdom settled upon the prince, a reminder of the delicate balance between ambition and caution. And now, Vizier Agar addressed King Yunan, saying, "You perceive this physician as a mere gazelle, yet I know him to be a formidable giant who covets your very life." Having woven his tale with such vivid color and dramatic flair, the malevolent vizier observed the king's contemplative silence, sensing that his arrow had found its mark. He awaited the king's response with bated breath. King Yunan spoke, "O vizier, your narrative was sweetly spun, and replete with counsel, providing me ample food for thought. Yet I am apprehensive that should I heed your warnings, I might meet the same fate as that merchant, the man who, upon the utterance of a parrot, tragically took the life of his faithful and virtuous wife, only to languish in remorse for the remainder of his days. I shall embrace your counsel for now, but I wish you to hear that tale from my own lips." The vizier, who was named Agar, replied, "What greater honor could there be than for a great king to share a story with his humble vizier as an attentive listener? Pray, commence. I shall hang on your every word." Thus King Yunan began his tale. It is said that there once existed a merchant, a man of considerable wealth and worldly experience, who had traversed the vicissitudes of life. He had journeyed far and wide, witnessing both the splendor and the squalor of the world. Of all his treasures and kin, he held the deepest affection for his beloved wife, Habiba, and for a talking parrot that graced his household. Now there came a time when he was compelled to embark on a journey. On prior occasions, when business had summoned him away from his home, he had entrusted the parrot to his wife Habiba's care, imploring her to tend to it with diligence. Thus, when necessity called him to set sail with a company of merchants once more, he once again entrusted the parrot to her and departed. As for the merchant's wife Habiba, in her solitude she grew increasingly acquainted with the parrot, endeavoring to amuse herself with the wit of the clever bird, seeking to dispel the melancholy that beset her heart. It so happened that the merchant had a servant, a young man who had in secret succumbed to a profound infatuation for Habiba. Yet, out of fear of his master, he confided his feelings to no one, except, that is, during his intervals of cleaning the house, times when Habiba, to avoid the company of a man not of her kin, would retreat to her mother's abode. The servant, whilst tidying the rooms, would hum softly under his breath, "Habiba, oh Habiba, thee I adore. A love like this none has known before. Months slip by. Every fortnight, the servant would come to cleanse the inner quarters, Habiba would depart, and the servant would continue to hum his ardent refrain. Then, at long last, the merchant returned from his travels. One evening, as he sat alone with his wife, recounting the tales of his adventures, the parrot suddenly spoke. In the very cadence of the servant, it chimed, "Habiba, oh Habiba, thee I adore. A love like this, none has known before." Hearing the parrot's voice, the merchant was suddenly seized by a terrible suspicion, a dark cloud of jealousy settling over his heart. Wrongly and unjustly, he accused his wife in his mind of infidelity. In a fit of rash fury, he rushed toward his beloved Habiba, and in one heedless moment, by his own hand, her life was brought to its end. In the aftermath of this gruesome act, driven by his imagined and unfounded conviction of her betrayal, the merchant took the parrot's cage in hand. He called upon his servant, whom he considered a trusted confidant, and together they ventured into the wilderness. After traversing a great distance, they chanced upon a tree beside a running stream. Seeking the solace of shade, the merchant set the cage down. The parrot, having witnessed Habiba's tragic end, remained silent until now. It began to sing the same mournful verse, its musical tone laced with sorrow. Hearing the words echo from the parrot's beak, the merchant buried his head in his hands, shame washing over him as bitter tears spilled forth. The servant, affected by the familiar words that mirrored his own lovelorn murmurs, felt his heart fracture. Gaining his composure, he approached his master to offer solace. "My lord," he inquired gently, "might you share the source of your sorrow? Why embark on this journey without provisions, with the dust of the road still upon you?" The merchant, trusting the servant as an intimate confidant, revealed the entire story, the calamity he had wrought upon his lady in vengeance for her supposed faithlessness. Upon hearing the tale, the servant, who had harbored true affection for Habiba, fell to his knees, beating his head in anguish. His wails and lamentations were so profound that the merchant, momentarily forgetting his own pain, began to comfort him. But it was then that the servant found his voice, laced with reproach. "Why did you act so hastily?" he cried, falling at the merchant's feet. "You should have come and killed me. Draw your blade now, I beg you, and punish me, for your lady was purer than a rose petal. It was I, the fool, who allowed myself to dream of her. When I cleaned your house, while the lady was at her mother's, I was the one humming those lovesick phrases. Woe is me, my lord. Please, let my life come to its end by your hand. Would that my tongue had cleaved to the roof of my mouth, so that your lady would not have been burned in the fire of your jealousy." Upon hearing the servant's confession, the merchant, distraught and panic-stricken, set down the parrot's cage, leaving the servant to his fate as he strode off into the unforgiving desert. There, consumed by grief, he descended into madness, living out his days in the shadows of despair, dying a gradual death. And now, as the tale of the merchant, the servant, and the talking parrot came to an end, King Yunan turned to his vizier, a shadow of anguish crossing his features. "O vizier," he expressed, "I too fear that in destroying the Sage of Ruin, I would repeat the merchant's tragic mistake. I dread the pain of regret that could haunt me for the rest of my life, leading me to madness and wandering." The wicked vizier, ever the opportunist, spoke with smooth flattery. "O king, I too am afraid. Yes, I fear that this so-called sage will use his sorcery to harm you, leaving our land of ruin without a ruler. Have you forgotten how he cured your skin disease overnight, an affliction that had tormented you for years?" The insidious insinuations of the vile vizier took root in King Yunan's mind, twisting his thoughts. Fearing for his life at the hands of the sage of Ruyan, he resolved to silence him by whatever means necessary. The following morn, King Yunan summoned the sage to the palace. As the sage entered, the king inquired, "Do you comprehend why I have summoned you here, outside our customary discourse?" The sage replied, "Nay, for none but God the generous knows the secrets hidden within men's hearts." King Yunan continued, "I have summoned you to instruct that you be brought to judgment and meet the penalty decreed." Upon hearing this, the sage of Ruyan reflected on his past services and asked, "Is this the reward for kindness?" The king answered, "I am compelled to end your life, for if I do not, you shall seek to take mine." The sage inquired, "Might I ask what is my crime? What transgression have I committed?" King Yunan replied, "I suspect you are a spy, dispatched by my adversaries to infiltrate my court. Moreover, I have learned that with the 3,000 gold coins I provided you, you have enlisted ruffians and scoundrels to rise against me. This is why I have resolved that the fullest penalty must be imposed upon you." The sage of Ruyan discerned that the wicked vizier had successfully sown seeds of doubt in the king's mind. Realizing it would be futile to dissuade the impressionable monarch with tears or reason, he resorted to cunning. "Since I have no recourse but to submit to your decree," he said, "permit me to return home to set my affairs in order and fetch a most valuable book that I wish to present to you as a gift." Intrigued, King Yunan asked, "What is this book? What wisdom does it hold?" The sage replied, "Its unique property is this: after my death, if you place my head before you and read a few lines from the book, my spirit shall give voice and answer whatsoever you ask. Do you not yearn to receive wise counsel in times of quandary?" Astounded by this claim, King Yunan granted the sage leave to return home, accompanied by 2 guards, to prepare and procure this precious tome. The sage returned home, and for 2 days confined himself within, diligently attending to his work. When at last he returned to King Yunan's palace, he presented the book and a pouch filled with powder. "O king," he proclaimed, "after my end, mix my head with these powders. When the skull has dried and the foul odor dissipates, place it upon a tray before you, read a few lines from the book, and pose any question you wish. You shall receive its answer." The amazed king responded, "First grant me the book, that I may open it and read a few lines whilst you still draw breath." He took the book from the sage's hands, eager to unveil its mysteries, yet, as he opened it, the first page revealed itself to be blank. "Why is this page devoid of writing?" he asked, confusion knitting his brow. The sage replied, "The initial pages are intentionally left blank, for they may succumb to the ravages of time. The text begins on the 3rd or 4th page, perhaps even the 5th. The king endeavored to turn the pages, but they were stuck together, refusing to yield to mere fingers. Determined, he moistened his finger with saliva and pried apart the first and second pages. Yet the subsequent pages remained obstinately adhered. Again, he wet his finger, managing to separate the next tightly clenched pages. But as he repeated this for a third time, a cry escaped his lips, and he collapsed to the ground, lifeless. The sage of Ruyan, having foreseen the king's ingratitude, had infused the pages of the book with a potent poison. Thus the tale reached its tragic conclusion. Whenever one who has been healed shows ingratitude, and whenever one who has received mercy seeks the life of his benefactor, the consequence is dire, as it befell King Yunan. As the tale drew to a close, the flickering flame of the ungrateful King Yunan's life was extinguished, marking the dawn of a new day. Thus, sleep embraced the Sultan, while Shahrazad's tale rested gently, waiting to bloom again with the next night.